Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Rank where I climb the online Series 10 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. We are nearing the end of Series 10, but before we officially finish off the format and the rank season, I wanted to feature this really fun Kyogre team that has some pretty cool support Pokemon in Choice Scarf Salamence, Focus Sash Raichu, and AV Escavalier. Now, Kyogre has really been one of my favorite restricteds throughout Series 10 because I think it's just incredibly consistent, and I know we had just used the Kyogre team with Scyther as well, but this team has a lot of fun support, namely the Salamence, the Escavalier, and the Raichu, and I think they can actually really hard carry the team. Part of it is that Kyogre enables both of them really well, right? With Kyogre, you can set up the rain via Drizzle. As a result, Salamence with Hurricane is a lot more consistent because Hurricane in the rain will just connect, so you don't have to deal with the accuracy nearly as much as before. And then, of course, with Escavalier, you reduce the fire type weakness for it. Escavalier is actually a really strong Pokemon in this format and actually matches up really well into so many common restricteds, right? This thing alone is good into Zacian, Xerneas, and Calyrex Shadow Rider. The main issue with Escavalier normally in this format, though, is that almost every team has Incineroar, and so, typically players will just bring Incineroar. Not only does that, have super effective Flare Blitzes into Escavalier, but you also have Intimidate. But however, with this team, because you have the Kyogre, you really deter your opponents from even bringing Incineroar out in the first place. And if they do, right, they have to position the Incineroar perfectly, because if they don't, Kyogre will just demolish it with a Water Spout. So, yeah, this is a slightly different take on Kyogre. We featured a lot of Kyogre teams with Tailwind, whether it be Whimsicott or Tornadus. Kyogre is often seen with Serena as well, but this Kyogre is actually a lot bulkier and a lot slower as well. You actually don't have too much speed investment. So the main means of speed control often is going to be Raichu going for an Electro Web to decrease your opponent's speed, and then Kyogre launching something like a Water Spout or an Origin Pulse. So classic instant here. Do know that it's Safety Goggles that just gives you a better answer into the Amoonguss and makes Amoonguss really struggle in this matchup. You've got Raichu with Feint, Electro Web, Fake Out, and Volt Switch. Feint is pretty cool. We just featured Scyther with it, and so you can potentially get some cool combos off with that, and also potentially just knock out Pokemon that are down to 1 HP if they're Focus Sashed. Classic C instance Kyogre here. Choice Scarf Salamence, which I think is so cool. The thing about Salamence, it's one of those Pokemon that's just pretty obscure in this format, and if I were to go up against it, I really wouldn't know what to fully expect. Previously we used a set that was really defensively bulky with Rocky Helmet paired with Coaching Zamazenta, or Howl Zamazenta, not Coaching. But Salamence here is just meant to maximize damage output. You've got Crunch, that can deal large amounts of damage into Calyrex Shadow Rider. You've got Hurricane, that helps against Rillaboom, against Urshifu. You've got Fire Blast, that helps out against Zacian, and then Draco Meteor is just really generally good damage across the board, especially into some of those other restricteds like Kyogre or Groudon, for example. So, in addition to outspeeding almost everything because of the Choice Scarf, you also get the Intimidate off, right? So to have double Intimidate on this team is so valuable. Intimidate's obviously just one of the best abilities in VGC. Having two means you can cycle it in multiple turns consecutively, and that's really handy, especially into physical attackers like Groudon or Zacian, for example. Finally, on the team, you've got Aguav Berry on Rillaboom, so no Assault Vest because the AV is on Rillaboom. I think Aguav is pretty neat, especially because, this Rillaboom is pretty bulky. Sometimes you'll see, like, Rose Incense instead, or Grassy Seed, for example. Or not Grassy Seed, whichever is the one that increases your grass type damage. I guess you could run Grassy Seed as well. But the main thing about Rillaboom is that, you can often take like multiple attacks and then Aguav just heals you back for a burst of damage. Aguav Rillaboom is also not exactly super common, so it can catch your opponent off guard. This is just a classic set. No Protect, you've got Wood Hammer, so that helps out a lot more, especially when you're going up against like Kyogre and Serena specifically. And then finally, AV Escavalier. This is a pretty common set, but the main move I'll call out is the Metal Burst. Like, Knockoff, Mega Horn, Iron Head are all standard. Metal Burst is really interesting. I didn't even know Escavalier got access to it until I saw this team, so, it's kind of like a pseudo Mirror Coat or counter, but it doesn't matter, whether it's physical or special damage, and you just kind of reflect it back, basically, and deal increased damage to your opponent. So it's pretty situational. You're probably not going to go for it super frequently, but it's one of those where, like, maybe your opponent goes for, like, a Origin Pulse or a Water Spout, or, like, an Astral Barrage, and you can just go for a Metal Burst in return. So, yeah. I think that this is just a fun team. It's really consistent. The creator was able to get, I think, like, top 10 or top 15 on the ladder with this in the rank season. So I've linked their Twitter down in the description below, as well as a rental and a pay. So huge thank you to them for the team. And thanks to you all as always for watching. If you enjoy, please show your support by leaving a like. I'd really appreciate it. And question of the day, I want to know what your final rating, I said for Series 10 is, I guess I would say of Series 10, but it could either be your actual ladder rating, or the question I was trying to ask was just like out of 10, like how would you rate this format, which I've asked several times before. In the end, I think I would probably give it a 7. I had a lot of fun with it on Road to Rank specifically, and it's one in which, like, I think if we were to play a lot of tournaments, you know, it would be a little bit more concentrated towards like just 4 to 5 restricted Pokemon. But for content's sake, like we were able to use every restricted Pokemon at least once, which I think was really, really fun. At least every serious restricted Pokemon. So let me know yours in the comment section below, and let's get started. Alright, getting started here, and it's a Calyrex Shadow Rider team for game 1 with Entei. Okay. Now we've got Crunch on Salamence. So that's really good in just potentially sniping down Calyrex. The main question here is what Pokemon is Focus Sash? All 5 of the Pokemon under Entei are Pokemon that get value from it in a team like this. Now, I definitely wouldn't expect it to be on Indeedee. But, I don't know. Got Raichu. Which has Electro Web. Maybe a Escavalier has Knockoff, which is really good. I lean towards a Salamence Escavalier lead. Because they don't have great Kyogre answers, with Kyogre in the back. And then what do I want as the 4th? Probably not Raichu, so it's between Rillaboom and Incin here. Rillaboom gives me terrain control. It also gives me priority Grassy Glides. Incin gives... Intimidate's really useless here, because all of my opponent's physical attackers, like, are pretty good against Intimidate. But the thing is that Incin's always decent damage and also can take an Astral Barrage easily. But because their team is so fast, I actually do lean towards Rillaboom here, because Glide just does immense damage into almost everything other than Whimsicott and Entei. And if they bring Entei, it's going to have a little bit of a tougher time because we have Kyogre to set up the rain. So, let's see. Hoping Scarf Salamence with Crunch here can just get some big damage and potentially KO Calyrex on turn 1. That would be amazing. That's why there's Crunch on this team. It's just Mienshao Calyrex. Okay, that's generally okay with me. Intimidate's useless against the Mienshao here. That's fine. We've got Astral Barrage. Or, they've got Astral Barrage. We've got Knockoff. Okay. Yeah, because I honestly want to just go for Crunch and Knockoff into the Calyrex slot. Because if we eliminate Calyrex, they just don't have that much damage into the Kyogre. And so, like, even if they go for a Fake Out onto Salamence and an Astral Barrage, that's fine. If they target the Escavalier, well, then I just get a Crunch. So their only way really around it would be to switch out Calyrex turn 1. This was the whole idea of leading 2 Pokemon like and threatening Calyrex with a 1-hit KO immediately. My only problem is that they're Focus Sash on Calyrex, which I feel like has become so much more meta in the last 2 weeks or so. There's Fake Out. Okay, cool, and they target the Escavalier. So I get the Crunch. I don't know if this gets a 1-hit KO, though. Let's see. Oh, that has got to be one of the most satisfying feelings. To one-shot a restricted Pokemon with, like, a random attack like Crunch from Salamence. I mean, that feels good. Okay, so... This was the whole idea behind this lead, right? And they bring up Whimsicott, which is amazing for us, too. And fortunately for us, they weren't Focus Sash, which is also good news, right? So, all good stuff there. Honestly, here... Like, I don't have that much incentive to switch out Salamence, because right now my opponent can, like, Tailwind in close combat. Whimsicott's not really a threat, so then the big question is, what is my opponent's last Pokemon? Maybe Urshifu. Truthfully, here I don't mind just going for Crunch onto Mienshao and Iron Head onto it, because I don't really need to respect the Whimsicott too much right now. So like, if you're my opponent, maybe you go for Tailwind, maybe you just Moonblast. Yeah, it's like they're going to Tailwind, and then maybe Mienshao gets a close combat or a knockoff off, but like, what do you really get from that, right? I guess the interesting thing here is if you are a Jetpack, and you get to switch out freely. I could have also doubled up onto Whimsicott. Okay, no eject pack though, nice. So this double up should get the knockout onto the Mienshao now, which is fantastic. Great. So we're up 4-2, and my opponent has a Whimsicott, which generally shouldn't deal that much damage. Now, one thing I'm a little bit nervous about is Whimsicott carrying Sunny Day. You actually see that sometimes on these teams with Calyrex Shadow Rider, because it drastically improves your Kyogre matchup. And with them having Entei, I don't know, it honestly would make a lot of sense, truthfully. I'm going to switch Salamence out into Rillaboom right now, because this gives me a Fake Out next turn, and then we're just going to sacrifice the Escavalier. Because the idea here is you knock out Escavalier, I get the Rillaboom in for free. I guess they could Sacred Fire that slot, but if you Sacred Fire the Salamence slot, that means I'm surviving with Escavalier. One play my opponent could make is like Moonblast and Sacred Fire the Salamence slot if you're not Scarf Entei, because then Whimsicott would go first, so it's like if you don't knock out Salamence, well then Entei finishes it off. It also covers for most of the switch out options I could have. And the idea here is that Kyogre is really good in this late game, right? Obviously, because they felt forced to bring the Entei, which is good for us. Even if Rillaboom goes down here, actually, like, there is an argument to be made to not bother switching in Rillaboom here, because, like, I assume Whimsicott is Focus Sashed here. They go for Protect. Okay, that's fine. So we've seen Protect, Tailwind. Neither of those are super surprising. And it's actually just Stone Edge. Okay, cool. That works for me. Although I guess this makes this a little bit more awkward, right? Because the whole idea was to just KO the Whimsicott. Now you can Sacred Fire into the Escavalier slot. You can Sacred Fire into either slot. 2 turns of Tailwind left. I can't fake out Entei. I mean, I can, but it won't flinch because of Inner Focus. Okay, I think here I'm down for a U-turn into a Whimsicott and an Iron Head into it. Maybe better to just switch into Kyogre here, though, truthfully. Like, I can U-turn into Whimsicott and then switch Escavalier out into Kyogre. I think I'm also okay with that, because breaking Whimsicott's potential Sash here is nice, and then being able to cycle Rillaboom back in for Fake Out later on is also nice. And the Protect last turn was what I was kind of caught off guard by, because I was thinking they were just going to go for the knockout onto the Escavalier. So I didn't get, like, the Rillaboom Kyogre safely next to each other, which was kind of what I was looking for. Yeah, they do Sacred Fire the Kyogre. Okay, nice. We get a burn. It's a little bit annoying, but it's fine. And then just Moonblast. Cool. And they target Rillaboom. Nice. 151 down to 93. So it's important to just remember that damage range. We get U-turn off into Whimsicott. Now I can bring a Escavalier back in safely. I could bring in Mens too, but I think Escavalier here is fine because Mens is actually pretty good damage-wise once Tailwind is over. What's interesting is the Entei moved before Whimsicott there, right? But they're not Scarf because they went for Sacred Fire and Stone Edge. Whimsicott just slower, maybe? Either way, we should be in a winning position now because they have one more turn of Tailwind, but I don't really care about Tailwind right now. Like, they were going to outspeed with both of those Pokemon anyway. So here we can just go for Iron Head. I think I'd rather Origin Pulse here just in case they manage to, like, crit Kyogre. Okay, they're just going for Helping Hand, which is fine. What's your attack? Stone Edge? Okay. Should survive this. Yep. Yeah, even with the crit, it's not enough. And that's game over. Because Iron Head will just KO Whimsicott. So even if we were to miss Origin Pulse, Iron Head would KO Whim, and then Salmon should win the endgame against Entei. But nice, we just get the knockout there with Entei. With Origin Pulse. So you can see the value of the Choice Scarf Salamence with Crunch and the Escavalier, right? So, like, we won this off a really strong lead, I think. And they didn't really respect the Crunch on Salamence. And, you know, that's totally fair, right? That is such an obscure attack. Like, to not only have Crunch, but also be Choice Scarf, like, that's the one specific combination we needed to have to KO Calyrex Shadow Rider. So, it obviously put us in a really commanding position as soon as, like, so much about Calyrex is just getting one big Astral Barrage often, right? So, it was AV Entei, Max Speed, Cobra Indeedee, minus Speed Nature, Specs Calyrex. Oh, wow. This is something I've seen popping up a little bit more frequently. So it was Focus Sash on the Mienshao. Eject on the Whimsicott. Yeah, they weren't max speed. It was max HP Whimsicott. Pretty interesting. And a lot of special defense investment. So not a lot of special attack investment. They did not have Encore or Taunt on this one. Or Trick Room. And then Choice Band Urshifu. Cool. Yeah, that was just the dream for Salamence Escavalier. And so I'm really, really glad to be able to get a good game in for our first match with this team. Because both of those are, I think, like two of the coolest components of this team. So let's just keep it going. Alright, next game of the day, and that's a Xurkitree. Whoa. As well as a Calyrex Ice Rider and a Ditto. This is cool. I haven't seen Xurkitree, I want to say ever, but in quite a while. Well, the Kyogre here is not max speed, but it's enough where we should outspeed everything after an Electro Web. I don't think we bring Salamence in this one because of Calyrex Ice Rider. Like, we don't really get to burst anything for huge amounts of damage. Hurricane would be the one reason into Urshifu, but that's practically it. The question is whether or not I want Rillaboom, because it is such a nice answer into my opponent's Suicune. But it's like, I definitely want Kyogre, Incin, and Escavalier, right? Because Escavalier is really good into Calyrex Ice Rider. So then it's like debating between Raichu and Rillaboom, and then also trying to figure out what I want to lead with right now. I generally don't mind Rillaboom and Kyogre here, especially because I could see them playing towards Suicune. Yeah, I mean, Xurkitree is scary, but, like, are you really going to bring it when I have a Raichu in Team Preview? And even if you do, like, Rillaboom can just Wood Hammer it while Kyogre protects, so it's not that scary. But maybe those are famous last words, and I would regret saying that. Let's see. Anyway, really cool team. If anything, I'm actually kind of surprised to see, like, the lack of Ditto in the last month, because you may know, like, that's one of my favorite Pokemon to use in Series 10. That's Suicune and Calyrex. Okay, I don't mind this too much. What do I want to do on turn 1, though? Like, with Kyogre, I can definitely Water Spout. That's no question. It's just that I could double up into Calyrex and go, like, Wood Hammer and Water Spout. Calyrex might Protect here. Suicune carries Protect less frequently. So, and we don't really need Rillaboom for anything outside of the Suicune. So, like, I lean towards just knocking out Suicune here, but they could obviously switch Suicune out. However, nothing in the back can really take a Glide and a Water Spout. I don't even know if I want to Glide here. I want a Wood Hammer, I think. How fast are they is the question. We're 128, so I think we should outspeed Suicune here. So, yeah, I'm honestly down to go for Wood Hammer and Water Spout, just to really demolish anything coming in. Unless they switch Suicune out into Ditto, but it's Calyrex switching out. Beautiful. Into Incin. Oh, that's amazing. I don't know if we knock out Suicune here, though, anymore, which is the slight downside, but anytime your opponent switches in an Incin into a Kyogre, that's a good feeling. Nice, no Protect, so we get a Wood Hammer in grassy terrain against the Suicune. Are you Citrus Berry here? If not, maybe Water Spout actually gets the knockout. Ah, they actually are Berry. Wow, okay. So I had no way around this because I don't have Thunder, but I don't regret that turn 1 play. Getting a knockout onto Incin is really nice because that is by far the biggest threat to Escavalier, not only in terms of damage, but also in terms of that Intimidate. So eliminating it from the field immediately is definitely a strong start to the game here. But unfortunately for us, yeah, we actually run into a Berry on Suicune, but they just go for Snarl. Okay, I'm okay with that. I was thinking they were going to Tailwind there, but I guess it makes sense to not want to Tailwind because you have Calyrex Ice Rider. But, like, now what is my opponent's 4th Pokemon, first of all? Because if it's Ditto, it's really awkward to bring Ditto in, right? Because I'll just you'll copy the Kyogre, and then Rillaboom can just knock out the Ditto. So then you would think they go back out into Calyrex, but if you go back into Calyrex, well, I can just switch Rillaboom out into Incin right now. I guess the problem is now with Snarl, I don't think I actually knock out the Suicune, but I think that's also maybe okay. Don't want to activate a weakness policy, and I also don't want them to get a attack boost right now. So I think here I'm willing to just switch out and click Water Spout. The nice thing is that Grassy Terrain restored us back to full HP as well, so we still get maximum damage output out of it. But because of that Snarl, I don't think we knock out Suicune. So it was a little bit unfortunate we ran into Berry Suicune. Now that's actually, one of the most common items. It's not super surprising, but some variants are leftovers. So yeah, for our lefties, I feel like the game's just instantly over on turn 1. But we're still in a pretty good spot. Okay, let's see if they Protect. Ooh, it is White Herb. Okay. White Herb definitely makes this a little bit scarier because I don't think I pick up either KO here. Oh my gosh, it's 1 HP. That's literally 1 HP. But they Tailwind, which is fine. The question is, did you Glacial Lance here? They did. Okay, great. Yeah, that's fine then, right? Like, I could just fake out Calyrex this next turn. And Water Spout again. Maybe I want to Origin Pulse instead. You do get a Scald off into Incin right now, but the thing is, Origin Pulse, I would think, then puts Calyrex in KO range. I could also switch Kyogre out right now to reset that drop. Escavalier in the back, that's a pretty good Pokemon to have. Especially with the way the game's shaped up so far. I just don't know the attacks on this Calyrex. Like, Protect here makes a lot of sense, but I don't mind eating up a Scald on Incin right now. The other thing is that Fake Out might also just KO the Suicune here. So another play we could consider is just Fake Out into Suicune and then just Origin Pulse here. Or Water Spout, actually. I'd rather go for Origin Pulse. Yeah, I'm going to target Suicune here, because I can also see Calyrex protecting. Oh, but they switched Suicune out. Okay. Into Xurkitree. Does Calyrex protect here? You would think so. But they don't. That's a good play. It's a greedy one, honestly, but it pays off nicely for them. Okay, so they get high horsepower off. Ooh, but they target Kyogre rather than Incin. Okay, nice. meaning I actually just get a full power, not full power, I'm at -1, but a pretty strong Origin Pulse off here into both of my opponent's Pokemon. Like, the thing is, now Rillaboom should just be able to Grassy Glide to KO everything, right? So, they probably read into a switch out there, and it's leftover Xurkitree. Wow, that's interesting. But at this point, I think Rillaboom should win the game as long as we time our terrain correctly, so we just want to double check the status of terrain right now. Okay, everyone heals back a little bit, which is nice. 2 turns of grassy terrain, 2 turns of rain. How much defense investment do we have? We are a plus defense nature, which generally bodes well for us. Got a Escavalier in the back. I feel like I can probably switch Kyogre out here. How many turns of Tailwind do they have? 2? Because the alternative is we can just attack with both Pokemon right now, honestly. And just, like, Throat Chop. The only problem is if High Horsepower and, like, T-Bolt pick up a double KO here. But then we're left with Rillaboom and Escavalier. Oh, but then the problem is I would have timed terrain incorrectly. So I actually will Throat Chop here and then actually switch out, I think, yeah. Mainly because we know that there's 2 turns of terrain, meaning there's 1 turn after this turn. What we don't want to happen is have both of our Pokemon faint simultaneously on the second to last turn of grassy terrain, because then it means I can't reset the terrain. Okay, they just T-Bolt into AV Escav, perfect. Expect high horsepower here. So you could have switched in Rillaboom, but not a risk I wanted to take. And Incin is clutching Hangsom, beautiful. That was a crit too, by the way, wow. Sweet. So now we get the KO onto the Calyrex. Might have been better to target Xurkitree there, but I don't know. I don't think like Xurkitree is that much of a problem when we have AV Escavalier in this end game. So now we're up 4-2, and we've timed our terrain perfectly, as in it doesn't expire this turn, but it expires the next turn, I believe, right? Meaning that at this point, as long as I don't like U-turn out, or parting shot out, I should say, into Rillaboom and get Rillaboom out on the field before the turn ends, we should reset terrain, which is exactly what we were looking for. So once again, I think we had a relatively strong lead matchup in this one, which was nice. That definitely was strong. Last turn of rain, last turn of grassy terrain, last turn of tailwind. All of that's good news for us. There's no reason to switch in either of these Pokemon. Like I said, what we want to make sure is just guarantee we get the tailwind up going into next turn. So it's fine to just Throat Chop here into the Suicune. I'd love to go for Metal Burst here, just because I've never seen it before. Let's see if we can get that off. Okay, there's T-Bolt into a Escavalier. I think we can take a T-Bolt and a Scald here too. Oh, they actually offer Icy Wind. Cool. Wait, so does Metal Burst then just like come from the Icy Wind? I would think so, right? Rather than the T-Bolt. Well, I guess either way, Instant will knock out the Suicune first, and then the Metal Burst will go off into the Escavalier slot. But I didn't want to risk a Mega Horn miss there since we were so far up in this game. Might as well just go for our, 100% accurate attacks. And yeah, there's Metal Burst. Yeah, it's it's just from the Icy Wind. So that basically did no damage, but I don't mind going for that because I thought it was likely Suicune would go for his Scald into his Escavalier, right? And like, yeah, I mean, we're so far ahead in this game that Rillaboom just wins the game. All we needed to do is make sure we timed our terrain correctly, which is what we're going for here. Okay, Tailwind peters out, no more terrain, and then now Rillaboom just wins the game. But the good thing here is that we just had an amazing lead, and then turn 1, the way they switched, naturally made sense, but it worked out in our favor. Mainly because Suicune didn't put on any offensive pressure, whereas the Calyrex Ice Rider did, right? So there's T-Bolt into Incin. I could have gone for Mega Horn just to end things a little bit quicker, but we're in a position where we don't need to rely on missing. Or, sorry, like, we can just go for 100% accurate attacks. But I guess also, like, since we have Rillaboom in the back, it might as well make sense to just go for the Mega Horn, because Rillaboom's always just going to knock out Xurkitree anyway, so we can just end the game a couple seconds faster with Mega Horn. Either way, all we were looking for here is a safe switching back out into Rillaboom, so, yeah. You can see this was not the matchup for Salamence, right? What in the world is Salamence going to do into a Suicune? Now, it can get an Intimidate off in a Calyrex Ice Rider, but I don't need dual Intimidate in this matchup, because with the Escavalier and Incin, we have a pretty darn good matchup in a Calyrex already. So, yeah. Xurkitree was cool here. Ultimately, yeah, if I led Raichu, I guess I could have gone Electro Web Water Spell. The question is whether or not that would have been enough to KO the Calyrex slot. I wouldn't think so. So I'm pretty happy about that. And then, like, yeah, leading Rillaboom into Suicune is like the dream here. So even though This Suicune hung on. It was still fine just because I think my opponent's restricted generally has a pretty tough time in this matchup, especially if I don't bring Salamence and Raichu. So yeah, we just want to make it as difficult as possible for a Calyrex-I Rider. So yeah, that was another great game. Escavalier just managed to put in a fair amount of work, and a lot of that was just positioning and having a really strong lead right from turn 1. So yeah, let's look for another one. Alright, game 3 of the day, and it is another Kyogre team, but with Trevenant, they actually have their own Escavalier. Very interesting, as well as Tailwind. Tailwind's what I'm actually primarily nervous about here, as well as the Escavalier, honestly. Very cool. I think the matchup favors them in terms of Pokemon, so that makes things interesting. If I'm my opponent, what am I going with? I would go Zapdos, Escavalier, Kyogre, Whimsicott. Maybe they bring the Trevenant, though. Like, you don't have to go with those. What do I want to go with? I'm thinking Kyogre, Raichu, Rillaboom, Escavalier, but, like, Mence isn't bad just to get a Draco off. Like, I think I like Raichu here and Kyogre because I can Electro Web into Water Spout, which is pretty sweet, and then Rillaboom, Escavalier in the back. Oh, do not lock in the Raichu. Yeah, I think I generally like that. This is what's funny about both of our teams, though, right? We both have Escavalier, we both have Rain, we both have Incin, so, like, I don't want to bring in the Incineroar because even though, yeah, that's my best answer to Escavalier, just completely gets wrecked by Kyogre. We still have okay damage against Escavalier with some of our other Pokemon. Like, Kyogre in itself, sure, even if Escavalier is AB, well, we have Water Spout. But the only issue here is I'm not bringing either Intimidator. And it's actually going to be Trevenant and the Kyogre. Interesting. Wow. Okay. I mean, I don't like that. I don't like going up against that. I think that's a very good lead by them. So I can't fake out turn 1. They're going to know I'm not Choice Scarfed. I'm leaning towards an Ice Beam and a Volt Switch and a Trevenant. I don't even think that will be enough to KO, but... Oh, you know the problem, though, is that their Kyogre doesn't protect here. I can at least go into Rillaboom, though, so it's fine, actually. It's not too bad. Also, our Kyogre actually doesn't have that much speed investment, which is kind of interesting right now. Ah, they don't protect Kyogre. Okay. That did nothing. Is that AV Trevenant? That would make... Like, Trevenant's normally such a supportive Pokemon that I don't anticipate that being the case. And here's the other awkward thing. If they go for a Grass-type attack and I bring out Rillaboom right now, well, I just set up the grassy terrain for them, but... I hate the idea of going out to a Escavalier and just taking a Water Spout. So, yeah, this was a great lead by them. I really didn't think it's... Like, I thought they were just trying to outspeed me with Whimsicott instead. Very cool. Okay. This just gets wilder and wilder. And they are slower, so they are very, very slow in Kyogre. Yeah, it's not enough to KO Trevenant, but I shouldn't have expected it to. Okay, they go for Scald. That's fine, unless they burn us here. Burn would be kind of ugly. Okay, no burn. And they go for Trigger. Yeah, it's not AB. Raichu just does no damage. Okay, I'll take that turn. Because the calc is Woodhammer is actually still a KO onto the Kyogre right now. I guess the problem is, like, Kyogre maybe it's just, like, that slow that it underspeeds us. Oh my gosh, yeah, it will be slower than us. That's awkward. And I'm not Assault Vest, so I actually can't... I don't know if I can take an Ice Beam right now. Huh. I'm looking for the switching into a Escavalier. I mean, I lean towards Protect here. I want a Woodhammer so badly. I just don't know if I can take an Ice Beam. And Grassy Glide should be a 2-hit KO into Kyogre still, so okay, I'll just go for Glide. I'm mainly projecting here to scout out for what the Trevenant wants to go for. That is not even a 2-hit KO. Wow, that is a ton of a defensive investment. And they actually just go for Will-O-Wisp. Great. This is, wow, I'm just getting wrecked. You know what? I have no shame in saying that. And they Scald into Kyogre. Okay, so they're already into Kyogre switching out, which is fair. That's exactly what we don't want to do right now, like go into a Escavalier and let them burn us. You would expect Horn Leech on the Trevenant here, right? Now you can Horn Leech an Ice Beam, which is bad, bad, bad. Guess I'll go into Raichu here, because I really don't want Kyogre taking damage, and then Woodhammer into the Kyogre slot on their end. This Kyogre is so bulky. Took a glide with defense, 1 defense boost at less than 50%. That's impressive. Okay, it is Wood Hammer. That's fine. The question is, I mean, you would think Kyogre Ice Beams Rillaboom. They just have so much bulk. It's like, no, they go for Scald. Okay, cool. That makes sense, because if you Ice Beam, like, they're trying to cover for the Escavalier switch in this whole time, which I think is very fair. Now I can Wood Hammer this, which is great. Oh, and that's still a KO. That's fantastic. That was a crit. I think that crit mattered, but to be honest, like, it was fine because let's say we don't get the crit. Well, I just bring in a Escavalier and then I can just Iron Head the Trevenant and then glide the Kyogre. Now at least actually gives my opponent a free switch in. And honestly, I would think they go into their Escavalier, but the thing is now I have my restricted and their Kyogre's already eliminated. So I generally feel like that's actually pretty decent for us. So we can just go on into Escav here. Oh, interesting. Incident. What's the full Trevenant moveset? Will-O-Wisp, Trick Room, Wood Hammer. Still 2 turns of Trick Room left and 2 turns of Rain. I lean towards hard switching Rillaboom out into Kyogre right now. And then going for knockoff on a Trevenant. Well, actually, is there a reason to knock? Like, what if they're a Colbur Berry? Could they survive? Yeah. What are their switch-ins? Escavalier. I think I'm fine going for an Iron Head here and then switching out. I could U-turn here. That's the other thing. I actually like U-turning because I don't want them to read into a switch and then just demolish Kyogre on the switch in. That's not worth it. Sucker Punch. That's cool. Okay. Well, we get the knockout on a Trevenant. Sucker Punch is really cool. That's a great Calyrex Shadow Rider answer. And they're going to U-turn. I didn't time my Rain well here. Now they're going to get another Intimidate off into me. But I feel like their last one should be a Escavalier, right? No, it's Zapdos. The only tricky thing here is I don't know how fast that Zapdos is relative to us because their Kyogre was so slow. But the Kyogre on this team has like 80 speed EVs. It's like 80, 92, something like that. So like, might actually outspeed Zapdos, but they could just fake out T-Bolt the Kyogre slot right now. I think the play I lean towards is knockoff and a Zapdos protect Kyogre. It's just I didn't time Rain correctly here. I do have Metal Burst. Okay, I'm actually kind of down for Metal Burst right now. Wait. But with Rain expiring, like, I don't know. If I were my opponent, I would probably fake out and T-Bolt the Kyogre slot. Okay, so maybe we shouldn't Metal Burst. It's fun, but I don't think it's the right play. Instead, I'd rather Mega Horns in so that Origin Pulse can KO it next turn, even without Rain. Okay, they did go for Fake Out. That's good. Alright, Escavalier has hit every Mega Horn today, and that normally, like when we go for an accurate attacks, I feel like the odds of all of those hitting are relatively slim. Oh, they split their damage though. Okay, they went Hurricane into a Scav, but we don't take much from that. Confusion is scary. Rain stops. Do I think their Zapdos is going to be that slow? Because I think I should just Origin Pulse here instead, but the problem is now I faint to a Flare Blitz. That was a great U-turn by them. And that's where if I had switched my Rillaboom out into Kyogre, I'd have felt very good about our position. Because then I could just switch Escavalier out and then just save it for the late game. Now I'm confused, which is scary. See, the thing, they have Whimsicott. I feel like I expect Zapdos to outspeed me here, so I'd rather Origin Pulse. I just don't think it KOs Incineroar is the problem. You could just T-Bolt here and then Flare Blitz, right? Okay, let's say they are out faster and they T-Bolt. If T-Bolt's probably a 2-hit KO anyway, actually. So I think I might actually just Water Spout here, because if we outspeed, it wins us the game, basically. Oh, let's not attack ourselves, though. Yeah. And we are faster. Yeah, that I don't know. It's just because their Kyogre was so slow earlier, it made me think that their Zapdos would also be slower. Especially because you don't need max speed, because you want both Zapdos and Kyogre to be in that speed tier range where you thrive from Trick Room and Tailwind. But now they just T-Bolt. I mean, that was risky, right? But basically the logic there... Oh, wait, we could actually still lose this if I hit myself in confusion and I get parried with Kyogre next turn, because they got the para there. Okay, but we don't get paralyzed. Jeez, that was stressful. My heart can't take some of these games sometimes, and those lefties. Okay. That was definitely a scary game. We got a lucky crit onto that Kyogre with a Wood Hammer, which I think mattered. Definitely did not expect Grassy Seed Kyogre. That is... It's funny because we've used so many different Kyogres at this point. You know, Sea Incense, Mystic Water. I mean, that's the same thing. Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, AV. They're lefties. 121 speed, so we barely outsped it. But that makes sense, right? Because that's the speed tier where after Tailwind you outspeed almost everything. Yep. Sash, Mentor. Interesting. What a cool... This Trevenant was really, really cool. Put in a lot of work. Grassy Seed Kyogre. Yep, a lot of HP investment, not very much speed investment. And then Choice Band Escavalier. Oh, interesting. So I'm glad they didn't bring this, but it makes sense. They don't have Mega Horn on this set, so they actually wouldn't have been able to deal too much damage into Kyogre with this. Yeah, which is totally fair. Cool team, though. And this Trevenant was very, very cool. Like, I was thoroughly impressed by it. So, yeah, it's always cool to see unconventional Pokemon put in so much work, and this thing was actually really scary. I think what's so interesting is that my opponent does not even have a Rillaboom. So it's like you only get value out of Kyogre when you go up against opposing Rillabooms. But it makes sense, right? Because it's basically saying, hey, Rillaboom's so common and it's such a good answer to Kyogre that with this Grassy Seed, it's a little bit easier to play around opposing Rillabooms. It's just an interesting item choice because obviously you could just throw something like a Mystic Water onto it. Choice Scarf doesn't make very much sense in the context of this team, but I think this is one of those unique scenarios where Grassy Seed actually makes a ton of sense, and even though it looks kind of weird, it makes sense in the sense that Rillaboom... I just said sense like 10 times. But my point being is that, yeah, like you're going to go against Rillaboom so frequently, and you don't necessarily need a Mystic Water, for example, on Kyogre. That's really the... or Wave Incense. Like those are the only realistic items that Kyogre could use with this set anyway, because you already have the AB taken up, and you don't want to use a choice item here. So, yeah. Really interesting. Anyway, that is going to be it for this one. So thank you so much, as always, for watching Road to Ranked. If you enjoyed, please show support by leaving a like. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, details for the team are in the description below. Question of the day, I want to know what your final rating out of 10 for Series 10 is, or your actual final rating on the ladder, whichever one you feel want to share. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.